The sun dipped low over the dusty outskirts of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Elm Street. 9-year-old Clara Mendonça clutched the frayed hem of her oversized T-shirt, her small feet pounding against the gravel as she bolted from her front yard. Tears streaked her dirt-smudged cheeks, and her voice cracked like thunder in the still evening air. "Mr. Rico, he sold Buddy. My stepdad sold my dog." She slammed into the chain-link fence, separating her run-down bungalow from the weathered garage next door, where the low rumble of a motorcycle engine had just faded to silence. Rico Vandal Torres straightened up from under the hood of his old Harley, wiping grease from his calloused hands on a rag that smelled of oil and regret. At 42, he was a mountain of a man, tattoos snaking up his arms like forgotten promises, remnants of a life spent riding with the Iron Vipers, a club forged in the fires of old wars and unbreakable oaths. His dark eyes, shadowed by a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, softened as he saw the girl. Clara was a fixture in his quiet world, the kid who'd leave drawings of wolves under his door after he'd fixed her bike chain for the 3rd time that month. But this was different. Her sobs hit him like exhaust fumes, thick and choking. He knelt down to her level, the knees of his jeans grinding into the dirt. "Hey, kiddo, slow down. Sold him like to a neighbor or what?" His voice was gravelly, honed by years of shouting over engine roars and bar fights, but there was a gentleness there, buried under layers of scar tissue from a past he rarely spoke of. Rico had lost his own brother to a senseless brawl a decade back, a promise to protect him shattered in one bloody night. Since then, he'd kept to himself, tinkering with bikes and nursing beers alone, honoring a silent vow to never let another soul under his skin. But Clara's wide, frightened eyes tugged at something raw. She shook her head violently, her pigtails whipping like flags in a storm. No. He took Buddy this morning. Said we needed the money. Some guy in a black truck came by real quick, handed over cash, $100 I heard, and they just took him. Buddy was barking and scratching at the door, but my stepdad yelled at me to stay inside. Her lower lip trembled, and she pressed her face against the fence, the metal cool against her flushed skin. The air hung heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine from her yard, mingling with the metallic tang of Rico's garage. In the distance, a dog howled, faint and mournful, twisting the knife deeper. Rico's jaw tightened. $100 for a scruffy mutt like Buddy? That didn't sit right. He'd seen the stepfather, Harlan, lurking around, a weaselly type with shifty eyes and a temper that flared like bad wiring. Clara's mum had passed 2 years ago, leaving the girl to navigate a home that felt more like a cage. Rico had turned a blind eye before, minding his own road, but this crossed a line. Pets weren't just animals, they were anchors in a stormy life, lifelines for kids like her. He glanced at the horizon, where the sky bled orange and purple, and felt the old pull, the Viper code whispering in his veins. "Protect the innocent, honor the bond. All right, Clara, tell me everything. Where'd they go? Any names?" He unlocked the gate with a creak that echoed like a warning, stepping into her world. She wiped her nose on her sleeve and pointed down the street. The truck had a sticker, a snake or something. They went toward the old mill road real fast. "Please, Mr. Rico, Buddy's all I got. He sleeps by my bed when Harlan yells." Rico nodded, his mind racing like pistons. The old mill road led to the fringes, where shady deals simmered under the radar, places where cash changed hands for things best left unspoken. He couldn't shake the image of Buddy's loyal eyes, the way the dog would wag his tail whenever Rico rode by. This wasn't just about a pet. It felt like erasure, like stripping away the last shred of warmth in that house. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over contacts he hadn't touched in months. The Vipers were scattered now, some retired, others riding eternal highways, but a call like this, It could stir the embers. As the first stars pricked the twilight, Rico placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, steady as an anchor chain. "Sit tight, kid. I'm going to make some calls. We'll find him." She looked up, hope flickering in her tear-streaked face, and in that moment, Rico felt the weight of an unspoken promise settle on him, one he'd keep, no matter the cost. The engine of his Harley coughed to life behind him, a beast awakening, as he stepped back toward the garage. But first, he needed answers. He dialed Jax, his old VP, the line crackling like static from a forgotten battlefield. "Jax, it's Vandal. Got a situation with the neighbor kid. Dog's gone missing, stolen sounds like. Mill Road, you in?" A pause, then Jax's rumble. "For the kid? Hell yeah. Rallying the crew. Give us an hour." Rico hung up, the phone heavy in his palm. He turned to Clara, who hadn't moved, her small frame silhouetted against the fading light. "They're coming, real soon." What started as a simple plea was unraveling into something bigger, threads of suspicion weaving through the evening air. Rico's gut twisted. Harlan's quick deal reeked of more than poverty. As the distant hum of approaching bikes began to vibrate the ground, Clara's eyes widened. Little did she know, the truth waiting at the end of that road would shatter her world and forge an unbreakable alliance in its wake. The convoy assembled under the cover of dusk, headlights cutting through the gathering dark like knives. Rico led the way on his blacked-out Softail, Clara bundled in the sidecar with a spare helmet dwarfing her head. She'd insisted on coming, her fists clenched around Buddy's old collar. "I have to see him," she'd said, voice fierce despite the fear. The Vipers, 8 weathered riders at first, then swelling to a dozen as word spread, formed a rolling thunder, engines growling in unison. The road to the mill was a serpentine scar through scrubland, flanked by rusted silos and whispering winds that carried the faint scent of river mud. They arrived at the derelict warehouse under a sliver of moon, the building's corrugated walls groaning like a dying breath. Rico killed his engine first, signaling the others to fan out. No guns, no bravado, just quiet resolve, the kind that had pulled them through worse. Footsteps crunched on gravel as they approached the side door, where a faint light flickered from a cracked window. Voices inside, low and urgent. Rico peered through, heart pounding. There, in the dim glow of a hanging bulb, sat Buddy, tied to a post, whining softly. But the man pacing nearby wasn't some casual buyer. It was Harlan's associate, a face Rico recognized from town whispers, low-level enforcer for the Creek syndicates, the kind who handled disposals. The truck's snake decal gleamed on the wall, a coiled warning. Cash exchanged hands, but not for a pet. Buddy was leverage, a message to silence Clara's mom's old debts. Debts Harlan had buried with her passing. Rage simmered in Rico's chest, but he held it, Viper discipline kicking in. This wasn't a brawl, it was justice, served cold. He nodded to Jax, who slipped around back. Minutes later, a distraction, a revving engine outside, drew the men out. Rico moved like a shadow, untying Buddy and scooping him into his arms. The dog's tail thumped weakly, tongue lolling in recognition. But as they emerged, Clara gasped from the sidecar. Harlan's truck idled nearby, and through the window she saw it. Not just Buddy's collar, but a box in the back, filled with her mom's old photos, trinkets, things meant to be sold off to erase traces. "That's mine!" she cried, shock rippling through her like a wave. It hit Rico then. The sale wasn't random. It was a purge, Harlan clearinghouse for a fresh start, trading loyalty for escape. The enforcer spun, spotting them. "What the—" But the Vipers closed in, a wall of leather and steel. No fists flew. Jax's voice cut the tension. "We're taking the kid and the dog. Tell your boss the debts die here." The man backed off, eyes darting to the odds, and peeled out into the night. Clara hugged Buddy tight, tears flowing anew, but this time mixed with relief. Rico knelt beside her as the crew revved up. "You were brave tonight, kid. That's family, chosen, not given." As they rode back under the stars, the wind whipping their faces, Rico felt the old promise renew: protect the vulnerable, honor the word. Harlan would face questions come morning, the law's quiet arm extended by viper whispers. But for now, the road home hummed with redemption's quiet roar. Word count 872. The first light of dawn crept over Willow Creek like a hesitant witness, painting the rooftops in soft gold while the air still carried the chill of night. Rico's garage door rattled open with a metallic groan, the sound slicing through the quiet morning as he pushed his Harley inside. Clara trailed behind him, clutching Buddy close to her chest, the dog's warm fur muffling her soft sniffles. The mutt's tail thumped lazily against her arm, a small victory in the wake of the night's revelations. But Rico's mind churned like an idling engine, the pieces of Harlan's scheme grinding against his thoughts. That box in the truck, filled with mementos of Clara's mother, was no accident. It was a deliberate cut, severing ties to a past Harlan wanted buried deeper than the river mud. He flipped on the fluorescent lights, the harsh buzz illuminating shelves lined with tools and faded viper patches, relics of brotherhoods tested by fire. Clara settled on an old workbench stool, her eyes red-rimmed but brighter now, watching Rico as he filled a bowl with water for Buddy. The dog lapped it up eagerly, paws scraping the concrete floor, while the scent of fresh coffee brewed in the corner percolator, grounding the moment in something almost normal. "You think he'll come after us?" Clara asked, her voice small but steady, fingers tracing the worn leather of Buddy's collar. Rico paused, pouring 2 mugs, black for him, milky for her, and handed one over. Steam curled up like whispers from the past. "Harlan, he's all bark, kid, but yeah, we gotta be smart." He leaned against the workbench, the wood creaking under his weight, tattoos flexing as he crossed his arms. Last night's ride had stirred the vipers back to life, but it was just the spark. Jax and the others had peeled off at the edge of town, promising to dig deeper into the syndicate ties. Harlan wasn't just dodging debts. He was tangled in something uglier, whispers of backroom deals that preyed on the vulnerable. Rico had seen it before, in the shadowed corners of his own history, when war buddies turned ghosts over unpaid vows. Outside, the neighborhood stirred slowly. A distant car door slammed, birds chattered in the jasmine vines, and the sun climbed higher, chasing shadows from Elm Street. Clara sipped her coffee, wincing at the bitterness, then set it down. Mom would have hated this. She always said promises were like chains. You break one, and it drags everything down. Her words hung in the air, echoing Rico's own scars. He'd made a pact with his brother under desert stars, swearing to watch each other's backs. One betrayal, one lost fight, and it all unraveled. Now, looking at Clara, he saw a mirror of that fragility, a girl clinging to loyalty in a world that traded it for cash. The phone buzzed in his pocket, Jax's name flashing on the screen. Rico stepped outside, the gravel crunching under his boots, leaving Clara to pet Buddy in the relative safety of the garage. "Talk to me," he said, voice low as he scanned the street. Harlan's bungalow loomed next door, curtains drawn tight, no sign of movement. Jax's reply came rough, laced with the static of a bad connection. "Dug around. That snake decal. Syndicate mark, all right. Harlan's been running small jobs for 'em. Fencing junk, nothing big. But the dog's part of a pattern. They've been pressuring families like hers, clearing out liabilities before foreclosures hit. Your boy's in deep, Vandal. Debts from the wife's medical bills, funneled through syndicate loans." Rico's grip tightened on the phone, knuckles whitening. The morning air felt thicker now, charged with the promise of confrontation. He glanced back at the garage, where Clara's laughter bubbled up faintly, Buddy chasing his own tail in circles. It was a sound worth fighting for, pure and unscarred. How deep And what about the box, the mum's stuff? Jax chuckled darkly. That's the hook. They're erasing evidence. Harlan's planning to skip town, sell off what he can to pay up. But the kid, she's collateral. Syndicate doesn't like loose ends. Hanging up, Rico felt the weight settle heavier, like saddlebags packed for a long haul. He couldn't let this slide into the system's gears too many times. He'd watched justice grind slow and favor the corrupt. The Vipers weren't vigilantes. They were guardians of forgotten oaths, men who'd traded badges for leathers after seeing too much rot in uniform. Rico re-entered the garage, finding Clara sketching on a scrap of paper, Buddy curled at her feet. "We need to talk to someone who knows the streets better than us," he said, mind turning to Lena, the old Viper widow who ran the diner downtown. She had ears everywhere, a network of quiet allies from nursing shifts to church whispers. Clara looked up, pencil pausing. Like the police. Doubt flickered in her eyes, born of too many ignored pleas. Rico shook his head, the motion slow and deliberate. Not yet. The law's got its hands tied here. Syndicate money greases palms. But Lena, she's family, real family. He helped her off the stool, Buddy trotting alongside as they headed for his bike. The engine roared to life with a throaty bellow, vibrating through the ground like a heartbeat renewed. Clara climbed into the sidecar again, helmet snug, her small hand waving goodbye to the garage as if it were a fortress left behind. The ride into town was a blur of wind-swept fields and sun-dappled roads, the Harley eating up miles with purposeful grace. Willow Creek's main drag unfolded, faded storefronts, the hum of early traffic, the sharp tang of exhaust mingling with bakery scents. They pulled up to Lena's diner, a neon sign flickering open above grease-streaked windows. Inside, the air was thick with sizzling bacon and murmured conversations, booths occupied by locals nursing hangovers and regrets. Lena spotted them from behind the counter, her silver-streaked hair tied back, eyes sharpening like a hawk's at the sight of Rico. She ushered them to a corner booth, away from prying ears, sliding plates of pancakes across the formica top. Buddy settled under the table, tail wagging at the scraps Clara sneaked him. "What's brewing, Vandal? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lena's voice was warm but edged, honed by years of patching up riders and holding secrets. Rico leaned in, recounting the night's events, the truck, the warehouse, the box of memories. Clara added details in hushed tones, her fork tracing syrup patterns, the clink of silverware punctuating the tale. Lena's face hardened as she listened, wiping her hands on her apron. The diner clock ticked steadily, marking time like a countdown. Harlan's been in here yapping about quick cash, syndicates squeezing tight this season, foreclosures piling up, families scattering. But the girl's mom, she worked with me at the hospital before. Well, you know, owed nothing to nobody. Harlan forged papers, I bet, to keep the loans rolling. She glanced at Clara, softening. "Sweetie, that dog's more than a pet. It's your anchor. We'll get the truth out." As the morning crowd thickened, voices rising in a cacophony of orders and laughter, Rico felt the threads pulling tighter. This wasn't just about Buddy anymore. It was a web of broken promises, debts woven from grief. Lena slipped him a key from her pocket, an old safe-house key, Viper legacy. "Meet me tonight. I've got contacts who can trace that truck's plates without bells ringing." Rico nodded, gratitude unspoken but felt in the clasp of hands across the table. Back on the bike, engine growling as they pulled away, Clara's arms wrapped around the sidecar's edge, wind tousling her hair. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that danced like warnings. Rico's thoughts raced ahead, to Harlan's doorstep, to the syndicate's underbelly, to the moral crossroads where loyalty demanded action. The road stretched on, a ribbon of asphalt promising trials, but also the quiet strength of bonds reforged. Little did they know, the purge Harlan started would unearth secrets that tested every vow Rico held dear. drawing the vipers into a ride that blurred the line between justice and sacrifice. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Rico's modest living room, casting striped patterns on the worn oak floor like bars of a forgotten cage. Clara had crashed on the couch the night before, Buddy curled into a furry comma at her side, both of them exhausted from the adrenaline-fueled ride. Rico hadn't slept much himself, pacing the kitchen with a lukewarm coffee in hand, the bitter brew mirroring the churn in his gut. The box from the truck sat on the coffee table now, its lid propped open, faded photographs of Clara's mom smiling in a hospital scrubs, a locket engraved with "Forever," yellowed letters tied with twine. Each item whispered of a life interrupted, debts twisted into chains by Harlan's greed. He heard her stir, small feet padding across the floorboards. Clara rubbed her eyes, hair tousled like a wild thicket, and reached for Buddy first, burying her face in his neck. The dog let out a contented sigh, his breath warm and steady. "Is it over, Mr. Rico? Can I go home now?" Her voice was tentative, laced with the fragility of dawn, as she glanced toward the window overlooking Harlan's place. The bungalow next door looked deceptively peaceful, curtains still drawn, no smoke from the chimney signaling breakfast routines. Rico knelt beside her, the floor creaking under his weight, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The scent of last night's rain lingered in the air, mixing with the faint leather polish from his viper jacket draped over a chair. "Not yet, kid. We need to talk to Harlan first, get the full story straight from him. But you're safe here, that's a promise." His words carried the weight of old oaths, the kind etched into his skin during long nights on desert patrols, where brotherhood meant standing firm against the storm. He'd broken too many silences in his life. This one he'd guard like chrome on a custom frame. Clara nodded, but doubt shadowed her features. She fingered the locket from the box, its chain cool against her palm. "He always says Mom's sickness ate up everything, but Buddy... and this stuff, it feels like he's erasing her, like we're nothing." Her lower lip quivered, and Rico pulled her into a quick hug, the embrace awkward but sincere. His tattooed arms a fortress of faded ink, wolves howling at a moon-scarred sky, symbols of loyalty that had survived worse betrayals. Outside, the neighborhood hummed to life, a distant lawnmower buzzing, birds flitting between jasmine bushes, heavy with dew-kissed blooms. Rico stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, dialing Jax again. The line connected with a click. Jax's voice gravelly from lack of sleep. "Vandal, crew's buzzing. We tailed that truck after you split. Led to a drop point on the river bend. Harlan's meeting someone today midday. Syndicates pushing hard. Word is they're foreclosing on half the block to flip for condos. Your neighbor's the weak link, selling out to save his hide." Rico's jaw clenched, the porch rail digging into his palm as he gripped it. The river bend was viper territory once, a spot for quiet rides and shared stories under starlit skies. Now it reeked of corruption, waters that had carried away more than driftwood. "Clara's mum, did she owe them real?" Jax paused, the sound of papers rustling in the background. "Nah, medical bills were legit, but Harlan jacked them up with side loans, forged signatures probably. They're using the kid as leverage now, threatening custody if he doesn't deliver more clear-outs." We ride in quiet, scout first, no noise. Hanging up, Rico felt the pull of the road, an old hunger for justice that burned hotter than engine heat. He turned back inside, finding Clara feeding Buddy scraps from a peanut butter jar, the dog's tail sweeping the floor in joyful arcs. "Grab your jacket, kid. We're paying a visit next door. But stay behind me, yeah?" She nodded eagerly, slipping the locket into her pocket like a talisman, and they stepped out into the warming sun, the air alive with the chirp of crickets fading into day. Harlan's front door hung slightly ajar, a sliver of shadow inviting trouble. Rico knocked hard, the wood rattling like loose bolts. No answer at first, then shuffling footsteps, and the door swung open to reveal Harlan, mid-40s, paunchy, with bloodshot eyes and a shirt stained by yesterday's regrets. He froze at the sight of Rico, towering in the doorway, Clara peeking from behind like a ghost of accusation. "Torres, what the hell? Girl, get inside. This ain't your business." Rico didn't budge, his frame blocking the threshold, voice steady as a low idol. "It is now. Buddy's back home. And this?" He held up the box, photos spilling slightly, catching the light. Harlan's face paled, sweat beading on his brow despite the morning cool. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken threats, the faint whiff of stale beer from inside clashing with the fresh breeze. "You were clearing house, Harlan, selling off memories to pay syndicate debts that weren't even hers, Clara's mum's." Harlan's eyes darted, a weasel cornered, hands fidgeting with his belt. "You don't know squat. Bills pile up, man. I did what I had to. The dog's gone. End of story." But Clara stepped forward, voice piercing the tension. "You lied. Buddy was screaming, and you took him for a message. Mum's stuff, too. You said you'd keep it safe." Tears welled, but her chin lifted, defiance sparking in the sunlight. Harlan lunged half-heartedly as if to grab her, but Rico's arm shot out, a barrier of muscle and resolve. "Touch her, and you deal with the Vipers. Whole crew, we know about the river meet. Syndicates got you by the throat, but dragging innocents down, that's low, even for you." The words hung like exhaust smoke, Harlan slumping against the doorframe, defeat etching deeper lines into his face. In the distance, the rumble of bikes approached faintly, a horizon thunder promising backup. Clara clutched the box tighter, Buddy's bark echoing from Rico's porch, a loyal sentinel. Harlan muttered curses, but his fight ebbed, eyes dropping to the ground. Fine, it was them pushing. Said clear the slate or lose the house. The dog's nothing, it's the kid they want leverage on. For quiet. Rico's blood ran cold, the moral compass spinning toward confrontation. This wasn't poverty. It was predation. Promises broken for profit in a town crumbling at the edges. As the first Viper bikes crested the street, leather gleaming under the sun, Rico guided Clara back, the gravel crunching like breaking oaths. Harlan slammed the door, but the damage was done, truth cracking open like a rusted chassis. They retreated to the garage, engines idling nearby as Jax pulled up, his face a map of shared scars. Plan set. We shadow the meat, get proof. No blood, just exposure, let the light burn 'em out. Clara sat on the workbench, Buddy at her feet, the locket now around her neck. The air hummed with purpose, the scent of oil and resolve mingling as the crew gathered. Rico met her eyes, seeing the flicker of trust reborn. This ride was deepening, pulling them into shadows where loyalty faced its fiercest test. Harlan's confession was just the spark. The fire ahead would demand sacrifices, forging family from the flames of forgotten vows. The engines revved, a symphony of steel and heart, as Willow Creek braced for the storm. The noonday sun beat down on the river bend like a relentless interrogator. Turning the water into a shimmering sheet of molten silver, Rico throttled back his Harley as the convoy crested the final rise, the engine's growl softening to a murmur to avoid drawing eyes. The Vipers, now a tight-knit dozen, leathers weathered by sun and storm, fanned out along the overgrown embankment, bikes hidden behind a thicket of willows whose leaves rustled like hushed warnings. Clara stayed back at the garage with Lena, who'd insisted on watching her, Buddy's paws pattering anxiously at her feet. "We'll handle the shadows," Rico had told the girl, his voice a steady anchor. But as he dismounted, boots sinking into the soft earth, doubt gnawed at him like rust on exposed metal. This wasn't a simple tale. It was delving into the syndicate's veins, where one wrong move could drag them all under. Jax sidled up, his broad frame casting a shadow over Rico's shoulder, the faint scent of pipe tobacco clinging to his vest despite the day's heat. Scouts spotted Harlan's truck 10 minutes ago, parked by the old dock. 2 suits with him, syndicate stamps all over 'em. Jax's eyes, sharp as switchblades, scanned the horizon where the river curved lazily, its banks littered with driftwood and forgotten tires. In the distance, the mill's silhouette loomed, a skeletal reminder of Willow Creek's faded glory. Rico nodded, adjusting the hidden recorder in his jacket pocket, a small tech favor from Lena's hospital contacts, meant to capture words that could topple empires without a single punch thrown. The Vipers had evolved beyond barroom brawls. They were weavers of truth now, honoring oaths by exposing rot rather than fueling it. They crept forward in pairs, the ground squelching underfoot, releasing the earthy tang of mud and decay. Rico's heart thudded in rhythm with the distant lap of water against pilings, each step a reminder of promises kept in quieter times, nights by campfires where brothers swore to shield the weak from the world's grind. He'd lost that innocence in the sands overseas, watching a comrade bleed out over a betrayed patrol route. Now, shadowing Harlan felt like reclaiming a fragment of that code, turning personal scars into communal armor. Through the binoculars, Jax passed him. Rico spotted the group. Harlan fidgeting by the truck, his face slick with sweat, handing over a duffel bag to a tall man in a crisp shirt. Syndicate muscle, no doubt, with a coiled snake tattoo peeking from his cuff. The conversation drifted on the breeze, snippets carried like smoke. The clear-out's done, kids' stuff sold off, house prepped for flip. Just need the final sign-off on the foreclosure papers. Harlan's voice cracked, laced with desperation, as the tall man counted bills with deliberate slowness. Rico's blood simmered. This was no mere debt collection. It was systematic erasure. Families uprooted like weeds for profit, loyalties bartered in broad daylight. The second suit paced nearby, phone to his ear, murmuring about quiet relocations and no loose ends. Clara's face flashed in Rico's mind, her small hands clutching that locket, a symbol of bonds Harlan had nearly severed for a payout. Jax signaled a halt, his hand firm on Rico's arm, pulling him behind a rusted barrel that reeked of oil and neglect. "Easy, Vandal. We get the tape. Let it speak. Charging in now. That's their game. Make us the villains." The words stung, echoing Rico's internal war. Part of him itched for the old ways, the thunder of fists enforcing justice. But the Viper's creed had shifted after too many graveside regrets. Redemption came in restraint, in choosing the long road over the blaze of temper. Still, as Harlan pleaded, the girl's mum left nothing but bills. "This squares it." Rico's fists clenched, nails biting into palms, lies woven from grief, turning a widow's memory into currency. The river's current seemed to mock them, flowing indifferent to the moral currents churning upstream. A twig snapped nearby, and Rico spun, breath catching, but it was only Drift, the youngest Viper. Slipping back from his perch with a thumbs up, the recorder picking up crystal clear, Harlan's voice filled the hidden earpiece. "Used the dog as bait, kept the kid quiet. Photos and junk, burned or sold. Syndicate gets the block clean." The admission landed like a gut punch, Harlan's cowardice laid bare. Rico exchanged a glance with Jax, the weight of it settling like dust after a skid. This tape wasn't just evidence. It was a lifeline, proof to unravel the web without bloodshed. But Harlan glanced their way suddenly, paranoia etching his features, and bolted toward the truck, engine coughing to life in a spray of gravel. "After him!" "Quiet!" Jax hissed, and the Vipers mounted up, a silent pursuit weaving through back roads where sunlight dappled the asphalt like fleeting hopes. The chase was measured, tails on the truck but distance kept, the roar of engines muted to avoid alerting the suits who peeled off in the opposite direction. Rico led, wind whipping his face, carrying the briny scent of the river into his lungs. His mind raced ahead to Clara, to the safe house Lena guarded, wondering how to frame this truth without shattering her further. Harlan's bungalow came into view as they circled back, the truck skidding into the driveway with a screech that shattered the afternoon calm. Rico killed his engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the tension. Harlan stumbled out, eyes wild, spotting the line of bikes like a wall of judgment. "Torres, you tailing me? This is private." But Rico dismounted, recorder in hand, playing back the damning words for all to hear. The crew encircled, not aggressive but unyielding, leathers creaking in the breeze. Harlan sagged against his door, the fight draining like air from a punctured tire. It was them or the streets, the debts. They swallowed everything after she died. His gaze flicked to the ground, avoiding the invisible presence of Clara next door. Jack stepped forward, voice even. "Debts you inflated, Harlan. Forged papers leveraging a kid's life. The tape goes to the right ears. Sheriff's office, clean ones. Syndicate falls. You testify or we let the river take its course." No threats, just the poetry of consequence. Justice served through exposure. Harlan nodded numbly, the bungalow's shadow lengthening as the sun dipped, casting the scene in twilight hues. Rico felt a quiet surge, not victory, but vindication, a promise fulfilled in the space between words. Back at the garage as dusk fell, the Vipers debriefed in low tones, the air thick with the aroma of cooling engines and shared relief. Clara rushed out when Lena brought her over, Buddy bounding ahead, but her eyes searched Rico's face first. "Did you fix it?" He knelt, handing her the locket anew, now with a chain reinforced like their resolve. "Getting there, kid. Truth's the best chain, holds everything together." She hugged him fiercely, the group watching in silent solidarity, bonds of chosen family tightening against the encroaching night. But as stars pricked the sky, Jax pulled Rico aside, the river's distant murmur a somber backdrop. "Syndicate won't go quiet. This tape, it's war, brother. You ready to ride deeper?" Rico glanced at Clara, laughing as Buddy nipped at her heels, and nodded. The path ahead twisted with ethical thorns, alliances tested, secrets unearthed, but honor demanded it. Willow Creek's underbelly stirred, and the Vipers, guardians of forgotten vows, would meet it head-on, their thunder a beacon in the gathering storm. If this story's gripping your heart, hit that like button. It helps these tales of quiet courage reach more souls in need. The twilight deepened over Willow Creek, like ink spilling across a canvas, the first fireflies flickering to life along the river's edge, as if signaling the fragile peace of the evening. Rico stood in the dim glow of his garage, the overhead bulb casting harsh shadows on the concrete floor where oil stains bloomed like old bruises. Clara had retreated inside with Lena, her laughter muffled through the open door. A tentative melody as she played tug-of-war with Buddy, using a frayed rope toy. The dog's joyful barks punctuated the air, a counterpoint to the low murmurs of the Vipers clustered around Rico and Jax. The scent of cooling exhaust clung to their leathers, mingling with the earthy dampness rising from the nearby fields, a reminder that the ground itself seemed to hold its breath. Jax leaned against his bike, arms crossed over a chest etched with faded scars from rides long past, his eyes reflecting the dying light like polished chrome. "That tape's gold, Vandal, but Harlan's cracking already. He called me on the way back. Says the syndicate's got a meet tomorrow night at the old quarry. Big players, cash flow for the foreclosures. If we move right, we can plant it where it hurts. Anonymous drop to the feds outside town, clean hands all around." His voice was a rumble, steady but laced with the caution of a man who'd buried too many brothers under hasty oaths. Rico nodded, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the salt stinging like unspoken regrets. The confrontation at Harlan's had been clean, no blows, just the weight of truth pressing down. but it stirred the embers of his past. Memories of desert nights where promises shattered under fire, leaving only ghosts and guilt. Rico's gaze drifted to the house. Where Clara's silhouette danced in the window, Buddy's shadow leaping beside her. She'd clung to him earlier, her small arms fierce around his neck, whispering, "You're like the dad in Mom's stories, the one who keeps the monsters away." The words had landed heavy, echoing the vow he'd made to his own lost kin. Protect the pack, no matter the miles. Harlan's bungalow loomed dark next door, a hollow shell now, its windows like empty eyes watching the unfolding drama. The man had slunk inside after the tape played, defeated but not broken, his muttered pleas for mercy hanging in the air like exhaust fumes. Rico knew the type, twisted by desperation, but redeemable if the light hit hard enough. Still, the syndicate's shadow stretched longer, a corruption that preyed on fractured families, turning grief into leverage. As the crew dispersed into the night, engines coughing to life one by one, Rico lingered, the gravel crunching under his boots as he paced. The air cooled rapidly, carrying the faint metallic tang of the quarry from miles away, a place of jagged rocks and echoing voids, where deals were sealed in whispers and broken with the crack of stone. He pulled out his phone, thumbing through old messages from Viper days, oaths digitized but no less binding. One from Lena popped up. "Girl's settling. Brought her mum's favorite blanket. We're family now. Don't let the wolves win." Rico's chest tightened. This ride had pulled him from solitude, weaving Clara into the threads of his chosen kin, but it demanded more than shadows. Justice here wasn't a blaze of glory, it was the slow burn of integrity, exposing lies without becoming them. Dawn broke with a reluctant haze the next morning, the sun struggling through low clouds that draped Willow Creek in a veil of grey. Rico found Clara in the kitchen, perched on a stool with a bowl of cereal, Buddy nosing at her dangling feet. The room smelled of toast and fresh coffee, a fragile normalcy amid the storm. Lena had left early for her shift, promising to loop in trusted hospital allies, nurses with ears in the system, ready to vouch for Clara if custody whispers turned real. "Morning, kid," Rico said, ruffling her hair as he poured a mug, the steam rising like a sigh. She looked up, eyes brighter but shadowed by the weight of half-understood truths. "Harlan called last night, said sorry through the door, but I don't believe him. What if they come for me next?" Her question hung sharp as a switchblade, and Rico knelt, meeting her gaze level. The linoleum floor was cool against his knees, grounding him in the moment. "They won't. The Vipers. We ride for promises like that. Your mum's memory. It's not for sale, neither are you." He thought of his brother then, the last words exchanged under a blood-red sky. "Watch my back, Vandal." A promise unkept, but one he'd honor now through this girl, turning personal redemption into a shield for her world. Clara nodded, spoon clinking against the bowl, but the doubt lingered, a quiet storm in her eyes. By midday, the crew reconvened at the quarry's rim, bikes tucked in a copse of twisted pines that whispered in the wind. The pit below yawned like a wound in the earth, dust devils swirling in the heat, carrying the acrid bite of limestone and machine oil. Jax had scouted ahead, his report grim, syndicate vans rolling in, Harlan's truck among them, a duffel of final payments in tow. Rico adjusted the recorder again, its weight a talisman in his pocket, as they crept down the service trail, boots silent on packed dirt. The air thickened with tension, the distant murmur of voices rising like a tide, bargains struck for blocks of homes, lives displaced for gleaming developments that favored the greedy. Hidden behind a ledge, Rico peered over, heart pounding in sync with the quarry's distant rumble. Harlan stood at the center, dwarfed by suited figures whose faces were masks of calculated indifference, snake emblems glinting on lapels. "The block's clear. Girls quiet, debts squared with the clear-outs," Harlan said, voice trembling but resolute, handing over documents that fluttered like surrendered flags. One suit nodded. counting stacks of cash, the rustle audible even from afar. Good. No more loose ends. Foreclosures hit next week. We flip clean. Rico's blood ran hot, the moral chasm widening. This was predation masked as business, oaths to community trampled for profit. Jax's hand on his shoulder steadied him, a silent reminder, patience, brother. The tape rolled, capturing every damning word, every nod of complicity. But as Harlan turned to leave, his eyes caught the glint of a viper patch on Drift's exposed vest below. Panic flashed across his face, and he shouted, "Intruders! Up there!" Chaos erupted, suits scattering, engines revving in the pit, dust billowing like a smokescreen. Rico cursed under his breath, the group retreating up the trail in a controlled sprint, boots pounding earth that gave way in loose slides. Shots cracked the air, not aimed, warnings from the vans, but the echo reverberated like thunder in Rico's soul, stirring the old fight. They mounted bikes at the tree line, the convoy peeling out in a roar that shook the pines, weaving through back roads where sunlight pierced the canopy in fleeting shafts. Back in Willow Creek as evening fell, the garage became a war room, maps spread on the workbench amid the scent of takeout burgers and tension. Clara hovered at the edges, Buddy in her lap, her face pale but determined. "You got it? The proof?" Rico played the tape for her, edited to shield the rawest edges, Harlan's voice filling the space, admissions of forgery, leverage on the innocent. Tears tracked her cheeks, but she straightened, clutching the locket. "Make it stop, for Mom." The crew murmured agreement, Jax outlining the drop. Midnight handoff to a federal contact, anonymous and ironclad. As night cloaked the town, Rico rode out alone first. The Harleys hum a solitary prayer under stars that wheeled overhead. The weight of the tape burned in his pocket, a promise crystallized. Redemption not in vengeance, but in light-piercing darkness. Harlan's path to atonement lay ahead, fragile as a truce, but the syndicate's fall would ripple, testing every bond. Clara's trust, the Viper's loyalty, Rico's scarred honor, they'd forge through, a family chosen in the fire of quiet courage, the road ahead twisting toward dawn's unyielding justice. The moon hung low over Willow Creek like a silver medallion, its pale light filtering through the canopy of ancient oaks that lined the back road to the federal drop point. Rico throttled the Harley down to a whisper, the engine's rumble fading into the night symphony of crickets and rustling leaves, the air thick with the scent of damp moss and distant pine. The tape weighed heavy in his inner pocket, a small device pulsing with the power to unravel empires built on broken trusts. He'd ridden out alone, as planned, leaving the Vipers to guard the garage. Jax's stern nod, a silent oath of brotherhood. Clara's wide eyes following him from the porch like a plea etched in starlight. "Bring it back whole," she'd whispered, clutching Buddy's collar, the dog's warm nose nudging her hand as if sensing the stakes. The drop was a nondescript pull-off near the county line, marked only by a weathered mile marker, half swallowed by ivy. Rico killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying his heartbeat. Steady as the tick of a cooling motor, he dismounted, boots crunching on gravel that glittered faintly under the moon, and scanned the shadows. No tails, no syndicate ghosts lurking in the underbrush. This was the Viper way now. Precision over fury, justice delivered through channels that honored the law without bowing to its corruption. Memories flickered unbidden. His brother's last ride, a dusty convoy overseas where a single betrayal cost everything, leaving Rico with scars that mapped his regrets like roadkill on forgotten highways. Tonight, he'd rewrite that ending, turning personal ghosts into shields for a girl who'd become family without blood ties. He approached the designated rock outcrop, a hulking sentinel overlooking a creek that murmured secrets to the night. The federal contact, Lena's quiet link through hospital whispers, a straight-arrow agent tired of small-town rot, had specified the spot, tucked the tape in a waterproof pouch under the third boulder from the left, marked with a subtle chalk X. Rico knelt, the cool stone rough against his palms, and slid the package into place, covering it with dirt and leaves like burying a vow renewed. The act felt ritualistic, the creek's gentle flow washing away the day's grit, carrying the faint, briny tang of the river upstream. As he stood, a twig snapped in the tree line, sharp as a warning shot. Rico froze, hand instinctively dropping to his belt. No weapon, just the weight of resolve. But it was only a deer, eyes reflecting moonlight before bounding into the dark. Relief ebbed into unease as he remounted, the Harley's kickstart echoing like a thunderclap in the quiet. But as he pulled onto the road, headlights pierced the gloom behind him, a black sedan, sleek and predatory, weaving too close for coincidence. Rico's gut twisted. Syndicate sniffers, likely tailing Harlan's panic after the quarry scramble. He gunned the throttle, the bike surging forward with a roar that split the night, wind whipping his face like accusatory slaps. The road twisted through fields silvered by dew, cornstalks bowing like witnesses to the chase, their husks whispering against the fenders. No shots this time, but the sedan's engine growled closer, a mechanical beast hungry for the truth he'd just planted. Rico downshifted into a hairpin turn, tires screeching on asphalt, patched with regret, leaning low as the world blurred. Moonlit fences, flickering fireflies, the pulse of adrenaline sinking with the pistons. His mind raced to Clara, safe but vulnerable, her small frame curled under Lena's watchful eye, Buddy's snores a fragile lullaby. This pursuit wasn't random. Harlan must have cracked further, spilling to his handlers in a desperate bid for cover. The sedan fish-tailed, closing the gap, its high beams blinding like false promises. Rico veered onto a dirt access road, the Harley bucking over ruts that jarred his bones, dust billowing in choking clouds, scented with earth and exhaust. He knew these paths from Viper runs, backways to Willow Creek, veins of the land that hid more than they revealed. The chase stretched, minutes bleeding into eternity. The sedan's grill looming like a serpent's maw. Rico spotted Salvation, an old bridge spanning the creek, its wooden planks groaning under weight. He accelerated across, the structure shuddering as if protesting the intrusion, water churning below in frothy protest. The sedan followed, but midway, a plank cracked, a deliberate Viper sabotage from earlier scouts, and the vehicle lurched, tires spinning in splintered wood. It teetered, then plunged sidelong into the shallows with a metallic scream, water erupting in a geyser that soaked the night air. Rico didn't stop, circling back through hidden trails, the Harley's growl fading into the undergrowth until the danger dissolved like mist at dawn. He arrived at the garage as the first hints of grey streaked the horizon. The crew stirring like embers rekindled. Jax met him at the door, face etched with concern under the porch light's harsh glow. "Clean drop?" Rico nodded, dismounting with legs steady despite the tremor in his core, the scent of creek mud clinging to his jeans. Planted, but they tailed, syndicates onto the scent, Harlan's feeding them scraps. Inside, Clara bolted from the couch, Buddy yapping at her heels, her hug fierce and wordless. Lena followed, coffee mug in hand, steam curling like unspoken thanks. The room hummed with quiet victory, the tape's absence a ghost that promised ripples, foreclosures halted, debts exposed, Harlan's forged chains snapped by dawn's light. But as the sun crested, painting the walls in warm hues, Jax's phone buzzed with grim news. The agent had retrieved the package, but syndicate retaliation brewed, threats whispered to local ears, aiming to discredit the Vipers as meddlers. Rico felt the pull deepen, loyalty's tether tightening around his heart. Harlan knocked then, hesitant at the door, face gaunt in the morning light, eyes downcast like a man seeking absolution. "I told them nothing real," he muttered, voice cracking. But they're coming for the girl. Say she's leverage till the dust settles. Clara tensed, clutching Buddy, but Rico stepped forward, blocking the threshold with unyielding calm. Then you make it right. Testify clean, Harlan. Break the cycle, or it breaks you. The man nodded, a spark of redemption flickering in his defeat, the air between them thick with the possibility of mended oaths. As Harlan retreated, the crew gathered closer, engines idling outside like patient guardians. The road to full justice twisted ahead, federal wheels turning slow, syndicate shadows lengthening. But in that moment, surrounded by chosen kin, Rico saw the legacy. Promises enduring, family forged in the quiet forge of honor. Clara's hand slipped into his, small but sure, and the dawn chorus swelled, a herald of trials yet to ride, where sacrifice would seal the final vow. The first rays of dawn pierced the garage windows like hesitant fingers, gilding the scattered tools and viper patches in a soft, unforgiving light. Rico stood at the threshold, his broad frame silhouetted against the emerging day as Harlan shuffled away down the cracked sidewalk. Shoulders hunched under the weight of his half-spoken confession, the air hung heavy with the scent of dew-kissed gravel and the faint, lingering brine from Rico's midnight ride, a reminder that the night's perils were merely the prelude to the real reckoning. Inside, Clara sat cross-legged on the worn couch, Buddy's head in her lap, her fingers absently stroking his ears, while her eyes, wide and searching, locked onto Rico's. The dog's tail thumped softly against the cushions, a rhythmic heartbeat in the quiet room, where the percolator's drip marked time like a metronome of unresolved tension. Jax closed the door with a gentle click, his presence a steady anchor amid the crew's murmured discussions. The low hum of idling bikes outside fading as the last riders pulled away to stand watch on the perimeter. "Fed's got the tape," Jax said, voice gravelly from the long vigil, rubbing a hand over his stubbled jaw. Agent confirmed retrieval at first light, no tails on their end, but Harlan's right, syndicates stirring, whispers of a sweep through town, leaning on locals to paint us as troublemakers. The words settled like dust motes in the sunbeams, each one carrying the echo of battles past, oaths sworn under starless skies, where loyalty had been the only light against the encroaching dark. Rico nodded, leaning against the workbench, the wood cool and familiar under his palms, grounding him as memories surfaced. His brother's final gasp, a promise whispered in the sand, unfulfilled until now, channeled through this makeshift family. Clara shifted, the couch springs creaking softly, and looked up with a vulnerability that twisted Rico's gut like a seized chain. "What if they take me away? Like Buddy, like Mom's things?" Her voice was a fragile thread, laced with the innocence of a world not yet fully scarred. But the locket at her throat gleamed defiantly, a talisman of bonds unbroken. Buddy lifted his head, whining low, as if sensing the undercurrent of fear rippling through the room. Rico crossed to her in 2 strides, kneeling so their eyes met level, the faint scent of her shampoo, simple like wildflowers, mingling with the garage's oil-tanged air. "Listen, kid. Promises aren't paper they can burn or sell. They're etched deeper like these." He tapped the wolf tattoo on his forearm, the ink faded but fierce, a testament to vows that had weathered storms fiercer than any syndicate shadow. "The Viper's Lena, even Harlan if he steps up, that's your shield, chosen, not forced." The morning unfolded in measured steps, the neighborhood awakening with the sputter of cars and the distant call of a rooster, Willow Creek stretching its limbs under a sky clearing to blue. Lena arrived mid-morning, her diner apron traded for a crisp blouse, carrying a folder of hospital records that smelled faintly of antiseptic and resolve. She settled at the kitchen table, spreading papers like a map of reclaimed territory, while Clara colored nearby, Buddy dozing at her feet. "These show the debts were manipulated," Lena explained, her voice warm but edged with steel, eyes flicking to Rico with the quiet pride of an old ally. Harlan signed Clara's mom into loans she never saw, forged consent for treatments that lined syndicate pockets. With the tape, feds can trace it back, freeze the foreclosures. Girls safe. Custody stays with kin, not strangers. Jax paced the room's edge, boots thudding softly on the linoleum, his mind already mapping the next moves. Crews spreading word quiet-like. Townies who owe us favors, they'll vouch. No spectacle, just truth rippling out. Rico felt the shift then, a quiet tide turning, the moral weight lifting like fog burned off by noon sun. He'd ridden for redemption before, chasing ghosts across endless horizons, but this, shielding a child's fragile world, honored the brother he'd lost, mending a fracture in his soul with acts of silent courage. Outside, the jasmine vines rustled in a gentle breeze, their blooms releasing a sweet perfume that seeped through the screen door, a sensory balm against the scars of the night. By afternoon, the ripples broke into waves. Federal vans, discreet, unmarked, rolled into Willow Creek, agents fanning out to Harlan's door first. He emerged pale but composed, hands cuffed loosely as he nodded to Rico across the divide, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes before the car door shut with finality. No drama, just the poetry of consequence. Testimony secured, debts dismantled, the syndicate's web fraying under scrutiny. Clara watched from the porch, Buddy's leash in her small fist, the dog's ears perked at the unfamiliar engines. When the vans departed, trailing dust like exhaled secrets, she turned to Rico, a tentative smile breaking through. He's gone, for good. Rico pulled her into a one-armed hug, the leather of his vest creaking softly. Gone where he can't hurt anymore, and you? You're home, here, with us. As evening painted the sky in hues of amber and indigo, the Vipers gathered one last time in the garage, engines silent but spirits revving with the glow of victory earned through restraint. Jax clapped Rico on the back, the crew's laughter filling the space, stories swapped over cold beers, the clink of bottles toasting oaths renewed. Clara darted among them, Buddy bounding at her heels, her laughter a bright spark that chased the last shadows. Lena arrived with pie from the diner, its cinnamon warmth cutting the cooling air, and they ate under the stars emerging overhead, the river's distant murmur a lullaby of closure. Rico stepped back, watching it all. The chosen family woven from threads of loss and loyalty, promises fulfilled not in thunder, but in the steady hum of lives realigned. Harlan's path to atonement stretched uncertain ahead, but the syndicate's grip shattered, justice moral and unyielding rising from the ashes of corruption. Clara caught his eye, waving him over, and as he joined the circle, the weight of old regrets lifted fully, replaced by the quiet roar of honor's legacy. Willow Creek breathed easier that night, its streets a canvas for redemption, where one girl's plea had sparked a chain of courage, binding hearts across the miles of an unforgiving road. Thank you for riding this journey with us. Stories like these thrive on your support. If it touched your soul, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Together, we'll keep the tales of unbreakable promises rolling your way.